What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So we got a big pay-per-view at the end of the year, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. I want to talk today specifically about things that Covington needs to do to defeat Leon. Obviously, we'll do the flip side here in a couple of days, but specifically Colby Covington, when you look at his fighting style, I do think he matches up well against Leon in a lot of aspects, and then I do think there are some openings and some vulnerabilities in other aspects. So what do you think that Colby Covington best needs to do to get his hand raised in December?
Well, I love this matchup, and when it first got announced, a lot of people were saying, oh, well, I don't really care so much about this one because stylistically, Colby and Kamaru are so similar, and we just saw Kamaru go up there against Leon, and while the first one was competitive, and he was basically winning all of those rounds, the second one wasn't all that competitive, and if Colby and Kamaru are so similar with their styles from striking to wrestling and everything like that, it's really not that drastic of a different story. But I would say there's a lot of differences in the styles of wrestling and the styles of striking between Kamaru and Colby, and that's what you have to look at. Kamaru Usman has become quite the power puncher in later parts of his career. He's knocking people out with one punch, and I think he started to fall in love with that like all wrestlers do. Wrestlers always wind up knocking people out with what their opponent doesn't expect. And Kamaru Usman was always showing the threat of a takedown against his opponents. And that's what had people on high alert. And that's when wrestlers are able to find those big power punches. Think about Khabib and Conor. Conor was so concerned about the shot. He was so watching the level change that Khabib threw a slight level change, and all he did was basically look at Conor's legs and then threw that big overhand and was able to land and actually put McGregor on his butt. So that's what Kamaru fell in love with, and he's with one of the best striking minds in the entire sport in Trevor Whitman, and I think that they've made some great adjustments for him, but he did get a little bit, headhuntish. He did really just want to go out there and outstrike a great striker in Leon Edwards. I don't think Colby Covington is going to go for that same plan. Colby Covington, while he has done great work with his striking and on the feet, he's never been the guy to just go clobber somebody with one punch. He's a cumulative, he's a volume striker, and he's really good at putting pressure on his opponents, eventually putting them up against the cage, still throwing lots of great strikes, and then mixing in his level changes into his takedowns, and then chaining his wrestling, which he's so good at doing. So those reasons are why I think Kamaru and Colby are so different, and I think the approach for Colby Covington is actually going to be a very different game plan than what Kamaru came in with.
Yeah, and are there a lot of similarities between Covington and Usman? Absolutely.
Right.
But it's the nuances in those similarities. Like you said, it's all the difference between being a one-punch power puncher or setting up that big shot like Usman does,
right,
as compared to being just an accumulative striker that really only uses his striking to get inside until he can pin you up against the cage and really start to exhaust you and work his game plan.
Right.
And that's what Covington does. Now, neither one of them are really submission guys. Now, we talk about great grapplers in the UFC, but you really have to kind of parcel them out into two different categories. There's very few that are excellent at both. I would say like Khamzat Chimaev comes to mind as somebody who can absolutely wrestle you down, chain things together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots until he gets you on the ground, and then can submit you. That's not really common. You're either a great wrestler or you're a great submission guy, and Colby falls into the category of great wrestler. So what I think he needs to do, I think range is everything for this fight.
I agree.
If the fight happens at Leon's preferred range, which is a kickboxing range, where Leon can find those kicks to the body, kicks to the head, long punches, he is going to have his way with Colby Covington. I think Colby knows that. Colby needs to keep this fight at a distance that's even closer than boxing range, almost like a clinch range.
Yeah.
He needs to get Leon up against the cage. He needs to use that dynamic gas tank that he's got, use those peppering shots to get inside, back Leon up against the cage, and then exhaust him against the cage. One thing we saw in the first fight with Usman and Leon was that Leon gets very mentally checked out and defeated when somebody's just holding him against the cage, landing their shots, exhausting him, defeating him, taking him down. He's got to get back up again. Take him down. He's got to get back up again. And his coach literally had to inject some energy into him, and thank God for that, because he was able to score that amazing finish in the 5th round against Usman. But if it weren't for that, Usman would have cruised to victory, and there probably wouldn't have been a rematch. So that one moment was a very defining moment for not just Leon Edwards' career, but 170 for the next 5 years to come. a lot changed with that one kick. So I think that Colby, to have success, he certainly can't get hit with a shot like that, because I don't think Colby's even as durable as Kamaru is. I think Kamaru is a bit more apt to take a shot than Covington, because Covington has taken a lot of damage throughout his career. He's getting towards the end of his career. He's getting into his late 30s, as was Usman. And so I think that he's going to play the range game from start to finish. He's going to come out and try to be that Energizer Bunny, get Leon to fight the fight in a phone booth, completely negate the kicks, completely negate those long 1s and 2s, and try to exhaust Leon and either drag him to a clear-cut decision or try to finish him in the later rounds.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Colby is not as durable a fighter as Kamaru Usman, and unfortunately, these are the last few fights that we're going to see Colby Covington in, and I believe this is the last title shot that Colby Covington will ever get. He's
no
just,
doubt.
Age isn't on his side, and there's a whole slew of badasses at 170 just waiting in the wing for their opportunity. So I think Colby Covington really has to come in with a bulletproof game plan. He cannot sit out at kickboxing range with Leon and expect to get his hand raised. He's going to have to play a perfect game plan. He's going to need to make this a 25-minute fight. He needs to steal rounds, and he needs to get crafty. Don't just shoot for the sake of shooting your takedown. You need to plan this out. You need to know exactly, okay, I'm 3.5 minutes into this round. Time to go for my takedown. I need to control him. If I'm not going to be able to hold him down for the entire 2 minutes that remain on the clock once I do get him there, then I need to control him for as much time as I possibly can. Okay, I let him back up. I likely stole this round. Now let me coast for 45 seconds. I won't make it look like I'm running from him, but I'm just going to avoid expending any more energy. Those are the types of things that a veteran, a guy who's been to the very top, a guy who's been sitting at the very top for a long time of the UFC's welterweight division, those are the types of things he knows he has to do, and he's going to incorporate into his game plan. And obviously, he has some great minds around him. They're going to figure out the appropriate game plan to attack Leon with. It's going to be hard. I don't really see this being an easy fight for Colby to win, but I do actually see him having a decent shot at doing it. But it's only going to come if he's able to mix the martial arts. He's not the world's craziest or fanciest kicker, but he's got really good long punches. 1s and 2s straight down the pipe will keep your opponent's hands up, because if you're somebody like Leon Edwards and you're just completely ignoring the fact that a guy like Colby Covington is throwing punches at your face, you're going to get knocked out. So you have to put your hands up, and that's what's going to open up the level changing for Colby. And if the level changes happen and Leon's able to defend 1 or 2 and he looks really good at defending takedowns in his last outing, then you're going to have to chain things together a little bit more and more. And Colby Covington understands that. Anybody who's wrestled for their entire life knows that it's never the first shot that gets you the takedown. That's like a lucky thing that almost never happens, especially at the highest level of wrestling or MMA. They know that you shoot the first one just so you can get inside, and then you start to change angles, so you look for that second and third. And when you're incorporating striking with it, then it adds another element of distraction and confusion to your opponent. And I really think that if he's able to get Colby or Leon backed up against the cage, throw lots of volume, straight punches right down the pipe to his face, mix in those level changes, he's going to wind up getting him to the ground. And I don't think he's going to get a submission. In fact, I think if anybody gets submitted in this fight, it's going to be Colby Covington, because Leon's actually pretty slick with his submissions. And a guy like that who's got such a good striking pedigree and is a guy that everybody wants to get to the ground, has developed a decent scrambling game, has developed a decent bottom game for jiu-jitsu, and has good submissions in the scrambles and up against wrestlers who are always so gung-ho at going forward. So Colby Covington has to watch out for those slick, sneaky submissions out of a guy like Leon Edwards. But if he's able to go out there, put the pressure on him, control the octagon, put him up against the cage, lots of straight punches, mix in your level changes and your feints, the fear of the takedown, and then eventually get your takedowns, rinse and repeat. I think he's going to have to go all 5 rounds, but I think he can get it done.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I'm so glad you brought up Leon's jiu-jitsu ability, because he's not a guy who's known for his wrestling. Obviously, England does not compete at the highest level.
Right.
When you look at Olympic wrestlers, that's not where people are coming from. It's great boxers, but more recently, really good submission guys coming out of there. He's a Gracie Baja guy. Gracie Baja, Birmingham, Braulio Estima. Yeah. Some of his instructors and some of the people he trains with on a daily basis on the jiu-jitsu mat specifically are absolutely world-class killers. And Leon just recently got his black belt. And they're not just ones to hand out black belts over there. So the fact that he's got that shows you that he certainly can hold his own when it comes to grappling on the ground. And I think he has a sneakier submission game than a lot of people realize. So Colby has to look out for that, because Colby can get the fight to the ground, but he may be susceptible if he overextends against Leon while he's down there. Leon's got very long arms. He's got really good Darce chokes, got great anacondas. He can slip to your back real quick and choke you out. So very interesting stylistic matchup. I definitely think Colby's best success is going to be to smother him, keep it against the cage, keep the range close, and wear Leon out.
I couldn't agree more.